appropriate. For more, I'm joined by Congressman Ted Lieu of California. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee and is one of the co-authors of the article of impeachment. And Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large at The Bulwark. I want to thank both of you for being here. I want to start with you, Representative Lieu. And, you know, I ask you this both as a member of Congress and also as a member of our military. As you are watching this nightmare go down and are preparing for the impeachment of the president for a second time, what do you make of the fact that the reporting is that there could be up to a dozen Republicans voting to impeach on Wednesday, when in fact there are hundreds of Republicans in the United States House, more than 100 of whom voted to overturn the election? Why is it just about a dozen?
Thank you, Jory, for your question. I previously served on active duty in the military, and I never thought there'd be a day when our commander-in-chief incites an attack on our nation's capital, resulting in multiple deaths. So I'm grateful that we already have the number 3 Republican in House leadership, Liz Cheney, saying she's going to vote for impeach, and so far 2 additional Republicans. But you're right. There should be over 100 Republicans voting for this impeachment resolution. It is very simple and straightforward. It's just one article on incitement to insurrection, which is also a felony. It's a violation of a federal statute. And the evidence is in plain sight. No one disputes Donald Trump gave that inflammatory speech. No one disputes that this mob attacked our democracy and that people died from it. So I hope that we get a lot more Republicans.
Do you think that after this vote goes through, and it seems likely that it will pass, that some of these Republicans themselves who gave speeches on the Mall, who were also urging Trump's followers to fight, 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 and were using that kind of sort of Lord of the Rings fight scene language ahead of the siege of our Capitol, do you think some of them should also face some sanctions?
Absolutely. No one is above the law, not the president, not the president's attorney, and not members of Congress. So if you're a member of Congress who gave a speech to this mob and you helped incite an insurrection, that's a violation of 18 U.S.C. Code Section 2383. The FBI should investigate whether you committed a felony, and if so, prosecutors should charge you.
And to add you into this, Charlie Sykes, it also is it seems to be a violation. I'm not a lawyer, but Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does prohibit anyone who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States from holding any office of the United States. That seems to fit both Donald Trump and his followers. But I want to ask you about these Republicans. You have Liz Cheney and John Katko. They were the first to break from Trump. You have the New York Times reporting that Kevin McCarthy, who's supposed to be the leader of House Republicans, asking other Republicans whether he ought to call on Donald Trump to resign. There's also reporting from the National Review's John McCormick that McCarthy had a call with other Republicans in which he warned them not to speak ill of any Republicans who did vote for impeachment because it might put them in danger of their lives. That sounds to me like a supposed leader of the House who understands that his own voting base is dangerous.
Well, it is dangerous, and this is not over. It's not that the democracy was attacked last week. That attack is ongoing, and it may get worse. But I have to say, this is rather a remarkable moment. This feels like a watershed moment. The civil war in the Republican Party just became a very hot civil war. I would never underestimate the power and the strength of Trumpism, but now Republicans have a choice, and they're getting a green light from, of all people, Mitch McConnell and Liz Cheney. So they're going to have a very stark choice, country first or Trump first. And that's why it kind of feels like a watershed, because what they're doing is they're passing out hall passes to Republicans. You want to break with Trump? We're going to provide you with some cover. It may only be a few dozen, but keep in mind that we have gone through 4 years of lockstep support for Donald Trump. No one wanted to put their head up. Nobody wanted to be first. And now they're looking around and they're realizing, you know what, maybe we can say what we've been thinking for a long time. So this is a remarkable moment. And quite frankly, I do think we're going to look back on what's happening right now the way we look back on the end of President Nixon's presidency, when you had Republicans go to the White House and say it is time for you to go. Donald Trump is not going to resign. He's not going to go voluntarily. But this is the moment that some of us have been talking about and hoping for a very long time, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, Charles, just to stay with you for just one moment. I mean, let's talk about just the raw political calculations of Republicans right now. If Donald Trump is convicted, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and all the other people who look in the mirror and see a president will never have to run against him on a ballot. Yeah. He'll never appear against them on a ballot. And even while he still controls a cult, obviously a very violent cult around the country, over time, his donors have left him. He's a toxic brand. No business will do business. Even Deutsche Bank has dumped him. In theory, they could emerge at some point by 2024, having shaken him off there. I don't understand what the incentive is not to vote to convict. You'd get rid of him. That's what Mitch McConnell seems to have decided. You already got your tax cuts, you got your judges. Why not dump him?
Well, that's exactly what Mitch McConnell seems to be thinking, and why he's pleased by all of this, because he thinks that it's going to be easier to wipe the stink off. Now, it's going to take a long time to wipe that stink off, but this is the calculation. I mean, think about where we were a couple of months ago. People were thinking that Donald Trump was going to announce he's running in 2024. He'd be the odds-on favorite to be the nominee. He would freeze the party, and you'd have sort of, the dead hand of Trumpism over the Republican parties for as long as the eye can see. And now it looks more likely that Donald Trump is going to leave in absolute complete disgrace as the support disintegrates. Now, again, don't underestimate that grassroots, support for Trump, or the possibility that there will be a spasm of violence in reaction to this. But now we're going to have this conversation about the Republican Party and whether or not it's going to continue down this path of authoritarianism, whether it is going to be married to the big lie. And I think that the shock of last week is playing out here. And obviously, Congressman Lieu was talking about this. Look, you've had a Republican Party that's been willing to look the other way for a long time. But what happened last week was so awful. It was so egregious, and they felt it so personally. So this feels like a very powerful political and historical reckoning.
Yeah, and, Congressman, even Alex Azar, who's Donald Trump's HHS secretary, couldn't really even say, that Donald Trump ought to stay in office. Like, he couldn't even really defend him. At this point, even the few remaining people around him are left. But I want to talk to you about looking at the next week, starting with Dr. King's birthday on the 15th, and then the official birthday that Sunday, the weekend, the Sunday before, when there are lots of church services around the country, moving all the way to the inauguration. Those dates make me nervous because a lot of this movement is fundamentally racist and race-based. And so I worry about everything, every place, every church, every synagogue in this country, as well as every capital. Do you have confidence as a uniformed member of the military and as somebody who works up close to the Capitol Police and Secret Service that these agencies and that the Pentagon, et cetera, are not so infiltrated with Trumpists that they will actually keep the elected president, the elected vice president, and members of Congress such as yourself safe? Do you trust these agencies to keep y'all safe?
I do. And what the American people saw on January 6th was Donald Trump's most fervent supporters beating up police officers. They murdered a police officer. And so law enforcement is very aware that Trump's most violent supporters are coming after law enforcement, and they will try to kill law enforcement. So I do believe that law enforcement is going to do whatever they can to maintain safety. And I was on a conference call last night with multiple levels of law enforcement, and they're very aware of what happened on January 6th, and they're going to make sure that January 6th never happens again.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about 1/6 the way we talk about 9/11. I don't think that date will ever go away in our memory. It is so horrific. Congressman Ted Lieu, Charlie Sykes, thank you both very much. Really appreciate you guys tonight.